A high schooler with no future, no dreams, and nothing to live for gets thrown 500 years into the past, into the bloodiest era in Japanese history. And somehow, this kid who couldn't even fill out a career form might be the only one who can end it all.
A guy stands in front of a fireworks display while some thug pulls a knife on him, screaming about being looked down on. Tanka doesn't even flinch. He just stares past the blade and says one word: dragon. The thug has no idea what to make of that, but before he can react, Tanka's already handled him without breaking a sweat. His little sister Akiho and Koharu find him after the fireworks, dressed in matching festival kimonos and wondering where he disappeared to. Tanka hands Akiho her stolen wallet like it's nothing, tells her not to lose it again, and immediately announces they're going home. Koharu catches a glimpse of something off about his expression and clicks her tongue in frustration. The next day at school, Koharu corners Tanka about why he ditched them at the festival, and he casually admits he wasn't actually looking for the wallet. He'd spotted a pickpocket targeting Akiho, tailed the guy to an empty spot, and when the thief pulled a knife, Tanka broke his fingers and took a photo for blackmail. He explains all of this like he's describing what he had for lunch. Koharu stares at him in disbelief, asking if he was born in the wrong era with skills like that. Tanka shrugs and says protecting Akiho is enough purpose for him. Their classmates overhear them arguing about raising kids and start gossiping, which makes Koharu explode in denial, while Tanka just sits there stone-faced. Koharu tells Tanka that Akiho is important, but he needs to think about himself too, his future, his own life. Tanka just repeats the same phrase he always does. Career paths and stuff like that just don't click with him. The words come out flat and empty, like he's said them 100 times and means them less each time. His teacher Tsumaki calls him in about a blank career form and pushes him to choose between college or work. Tanka says he'll just get a job, and when the teacher mentions his parents would want more for him, Tanka cuts him off cold. They're dead. They died a long time ago, and the room goes painfully quiet. Tanka explains that all he needs is to earn enough to support Akiho until she can stand on her own. The teacher asks what comes after that, and Tanka goes completely blank. He's never once thought about his own life beyond keeping his sister safe. The question hangs in the air like it never occurred to him that he might matter too. He leaves the guidance office and walks the halls alone, feeling the weight of everything he can't name. He just wants to live life to the fullest, but everything feels empty, like he's living someone else's story. He wonders if he'll just keep drifting without ever being passionate about anything, getting by until he dies without purpose. The teacher tells him to think it through and come back tomorrow, that it's okay to take his time with something this important. Tanka watches other students through the window, a baseball player celebrating a catch, girls laughing about their dreams, and wonders if people actually live like that, chasing something they want to do. Back home, the reality of Tanka's life hits hard. His uncle, the guardian who took him and Akiho in after their parents died in an accident, is an abusive piece of garbage. The man screams about keeping a roof over their heads, slaps Tanka around, and reminds him constantly that he's nothing but a burden. Akiho watches from the doorway, terrified. The uncle puts on a sweet face for Akiho, calling her a good girl, but his eyes go dark the second he looks at Tanka. He reaches for Akiho with that creepy smile, and Tanka's hand shoots out to pull her away. Those eyes tell him everything he needs to know about what kind of man this is. Tanka apologizes to the uncle for his attitude and promises to pay this month's share, swallowing every ounce of pride he has left. Later that night, he lies in his tiny room with Akiho sleeping beside him, whispering sorry for being such an unreliable big brother. He even considers sending her to the same facility as Koharu, just to get her somewhere safe. Koharu gets called into the teacher's office for her own career discussion, and she's surprised Tanka was there yesterday. She tells the teacher his astrology sign means he was born under the star of kindness, which is her way of saying Tsumaki-sensei is one of the few adults she trusts. The conversation drifts to how close she and Tanka actually are. Koharu doesn't know how to explain her relationship with Tanka. It's not dating, it's not just friendship, it's something built on shared damage and mutual protection. She admits she's short-tempered, says whatever she wants without thinking, and sucks at being considerate. She even laughs about turning into her mother, the woman she still hasn't forgiven. But then Koharu gets vulnerable in a way she clearly wasn't planning. She tells Tanka she kind of understands now why her dad ran away, and asks what if someday she does something that makes him hate her. Tanka barely processes the weight of what she's saying before she's already moved on to something else. Tanka tells Koharu he'd wait forever, for years, decades, even into the next life. He says it with a straight face, completely matter-of-fact, like he's stating the weather. Koharu's eyes go wide, and she calls him an idiot, but her expression betrays everything she's trying to hide, because those words just rewired something inside her. Then, everything changes. Tanka wakes up floating in darkness, asking if he's dead, his thoughts immediately going to Akiho and Koharu. A voice screams at him to wake up, and his eyes snap open to a world that shouldn't exist. A massive dragon-like creature looming over him, declaring them children chosen by the war gods. 3 teenagers huddle together in shock. Tanka, Akiho, and Koharu, all ripped from their normal lives and dropped into something impossible. The creature announces it has come to grant them a choice in their lives, and this is just the beginning. Everything Tanka thought he knew about his empty, purposeless existence is about to be completely rewritten. So last chapter, Tanka, Koharu, and Akiho got ripped out of their world by a literal dragon god who told them they'd been chosen. No explanation, no warning. Just 3 high schoolers getting swallowed by a supernatural vortex while screaming their lungs out. And now, they're waking up in the middle of a real battlefield in the Sengoku era, surrounded by actual warriors killing each other. The dragon wasn't kidding. This is their new reality. The dragon carries them straight into the heart of a war zone. The Battle of Kawanakajima. Armies are clashing below, soldiers are dying, and Tanka can only stare in shock as the carnage unfolds right beneath them. But here's the wild part. As long as they're connected to the dragon, nobody on the ground can even see them. They're invisible spectators to a massacre, and the dragon treats it like a guided tour. The dragon tells them they need to find someone who can see them, someone special. It calls this perfect timing, like dropping teenagers into a war zone is just another Tuesday. Tanka's still processing the fact that real people are dying real deaths below him, and the dragon's already moving on to the next step of its plan. Whatever this creature wants from them, it's clearly been planning it for a while. They find the one who can see them, a dying samurai, sitting alone on a battlefield soaked in blood. He's old, bald, battle-scarred, and bleeding out with his sword still in his hands. The dragon landed them right next to a man spending his final moments on Earth, and Tanka can't look away. This isn't a video game. This is a man watching his own life drain out of him. The samurai's name doesn't matter yet. What matters is what he says. He served Lord Nagao Tamakage and Lord Kagetora for 30 years, dreaming of ruling the realm alongside father and son. But his time is up, and he knows it. He tells Tanka to go, to pay him no mind. Like a dying warrior's pride won't let him be pitied by a kid in a school uniform. But Tanka doesn't leave. He asks the man a question that cuts deeper than any sword on that battlefield. Isn't there anyone you've promised to live your life with? The samurai pauses. His wife, his 4 children. For 30 years, he chased glory and war, and now he's bleeding out alone in a field while his family waits at home. The weight of that hits everyone. Tanka, Koharu, Akiho, all of them standing in silence. The samurai says his family will live on without him, that death is just part of being a warrior. But the way his voice cracks tells a different story. Tanka stares at him with those empty eyes that suddenly don't look so empty anymore, because he's seeing himself. A guy who lives for someone else but never thinks about what happens to the people left behind. Koharu watches Tanka's face and knows exactly what's going through his head. Then the moment shatters. An enemy soldier bursts through the clearing, blade raised, aimed straight at Tanka. The samurai moves, not away, not to save himself. He throws his broken body between the blade and this random kid he just met. Steel connects. Blood sprays. A man who was already dying chose to spend his last breath protecting a stranger. Tanka's face says everything. You protected me. Why? The samurai doesn't answer with words. He just whispers one thing. Live, that's it. That's his dying wish to a teenager he's known for 5 minutes. The battlefield goes quiet around them, and for the first time in this entire story, Tanka looks like something inside him actually cracked open. The dragon returns, coiling through the sky above the aftermath. Koharu asks if they should have done something about the samurai's body, and the dragon says to leave it. It's proof the man fought bravely. Tanka just stares ahead, processing what he saw. A real exchange of lives, not some half-hearted threat, but genuine life or death sacrifice. Something shifted in him, and everyone around him can feel it. The dragon wastes no time. It flies them to their actual destination, the Ashikaga School, the only university in Sengoku-era Japan. The place is massive, packed with thousands of students from Ezo in the north to Ryukyu in the south, and even the buildings look more impressive than their modern-day school. Tanka, still in his school uniform, mutters that there are even more people here than a modern university. Koharu's already lost without the dragon to guide them. The dragon reappears, except now it's transformed into a tiny, adorable creature that fits in your palm. The girls immediately lose their minds over how cute it is, completely forgetting they were just terrified of this thing. It confiscates their smartphones because of course ancient Japan doesn't have cell service, and announces that this is the only university in the entire era. 3,000 people have gathered here to study, and every single one of them gives off an intense, almost suffocating aura. This place, the Ashikaga School, is described as the wellspring of wisdom in the chaotic Sengoku era. It houses the country's greatest library, with rare books imported from across the continent. Students here study divination, Confucianism, medicine, and military strategy, and the most talented graduates get recruited by warlords across Japan. The lords compete fiercely for these graduates, because in an era of constant war, brains win battles just as much as swords do. And the people being trained here, they're called the gunbaishi, the military strategists who rule the battlefield. A samurai appears on screen looking absolutely unhinged, war fan in hand, screaming the title like it's the most important word in the world. Tanka asks if that's the same as a gunshi, and the dragon explains that term was actually coined later. Originally, no such word existed. This is the real thing, the original version, before history cleaned it up. The kids aren't exactly thrilled about going back to a war zone. Koharu flat out says she doesn't think they could accomplish anything in a place like that, and for once, Tanka seems to agree. But the dragon just smiles, if a tiny dragon can smile, and says 3 words: "It will be fine." The confidence in that statement is either deeply reassuring or deeply terrifying, and honestly, it could go either way. They're introduced to their instructor, Kurogane Udo, the younger brother of Kurogane Kosetsu. He arrives late, apologizing about an urgent message, but his presence immediately commands the room. He heard from the High Preceptor of Maya that these children watched over his brother in his final moments, and he bows in genuine gratitude. The brother of the man who died on that battlefield is now standing in front of them, alive and carrying the weight of that loss. Udo doesn't waste time on pleasantries. He explains that his family received an urgent request to mobilize for battle. A local clan from the northern mountains has attacked one of their villages with about 200 troops. 300 soldiers from a nearby fort were dispatched, but are struggling in the unfamiliar mountain terrain, and 500 reinforcements from the main castle are currently marching to join them. Udu's job? Serve as their military strategist, and he's bringing Tanka along for the ride. They arrive at the front, and the situation is grim. The battle commander greets Udu with desperate gratitude, explaining that the enemy specializes in mountain warfare. Cavalry can't enter the deep mountains, longbows and pikes are useless in the terrain, and their foot soldiers are getting dragged into the woods and picked off one by one. Reinforcements are 2 hours away, but honestly, the commander isn't sure more bodies will even help. This isn't a fight they can brute force their way through. Meanwhile, there's a young lord named Taru, 14 years old, fresh off his coming-of-age ceremony, and absolutely losing his mind because his father won't let him lead the charge. He's screaming, "Father!" at the top of his lungs while his retainer holds him back, and Tanka just stares at this kid who's the same age as Akiho, a middle schooler, armored up and ready to die in a mountain war. The reality of this era keeps hitting harder with every passing minute. Then Tanka opens his mouth, and everything changes. He asks one simple question: what is the enemy's goal? The veteran warriors scoff at this bizarrely dressed newcomer, but Udu tells them to listen. Tanka breaks it down cold. The enemy isn't fighting for territory or strongholds. They're fighting to plunder. And plunderers are driven by cowardice. They fear overwhelming reinforcements more than anything. So if you can make them believe they're facing impossible odds, you don't even need to fight them. The room goes dead silent, because this kid just read the entire battlefield in 30 seconds flat. Tanka's back from the battlefield, and the first thing waiting for him is Koharu screaming at the top of her lungs, "Don't leave us behind!" She's furious, eyes blazing, teeth bared, the full Koharu experience. Tanka tries to explain he didn't choose to leave, he got dragged away, but she's not hearing it. And then he hits her with that signature observation skill, pointing out her crumpled sleeve, her shifted hair clip, the fact that she was clearly sleeping with her arm as a pillow and drooling the whole time she was supposedly worried sick. They've been given a house at the Ashikaga School, basically a student dorm with a kitchen and everything. Koharu proudly shows off ingredients the dragon Kurikara gave them, though Tanka immediately notices the food looks half-eaten already. The girls admit they didn't know how to start a fire, and were just waiting for him to come back and cook, which is both hilarious and a little sad. Tanka accuses them of waiting on purpose, so he'd be the one stuck doing it, and honestly, he's probably right. So Tanka cooks. He chops vegetables, stirs a pot over an open fire, and makes a gorgeous-looking nabe that has Koharu practically melting. She declares the Sengoku period is amazing just because the food is this good, and Akiho calls Tanka an old geezer for savoring it so deeply. For just a moment, the three of them are sitting together in a warm room, eating hot food, and it feels almost normal, like they're back home instead of stranded 500 years in the past. But the warmth doesn't last. The conversation shifts to what Tanka saw on the battlefield. The tuition is free because daimyo fund the school to produce talented strategists, and the vegetables were grown by students themselves. Koharu says something wistful about wishing the future could be like this too, and then immediately catches herself. Because the future here isn't cozy nabe dinners. It's people killing each other across the entire country. The reality of where they are settles back in like a cold draft. Tanka gets real with them. He tells Koharu and Akiho that as military strategists being trained at this school, they might end up on a real battlefield someday. He didn't actually fight, but he learned plenty. People die easily, no matter who they are. The guilt is eating at him. The worry that dragging these two to such a dangerous place was the wrong call. He's been turning it over in his head, wondering if he's the only one who's actually okay with being here. Koharu asks him directly, "Do you regret coming here?" Tanka's answer is complicated and raw. He says if both worlds are hell, he'd rather be in the hell where the three of them can live together. But that's not even the real bombshell. He admits that when he saw that battle, his mind was completely filled for the first time with thoughts of what he would do, how he could survive. For the first time in his life, it felt like his blood was actually flowing through his veins. Then, Tanka says the thing that changes everything. "I want to live in this era." Not survive, live. Koharu asks if he means by himself, and he looks at her like she's lost her mind. Obviously, all three of them together. It's the most purpose Tanka has ever shown in this entire story, and it's happening in a world where people die over grain and armor. The kid who couldn't fill out a career form just found his reason to exist, and it's 5 centuries in the past. Meanwhile, Udo and the dragon Kurikara are having a private conversation about Tanka. Udo says that most people born in the Sengoku era are either a mess of nerves or paralyzed by fear when they first step onto a battlefield. But Tanka, a kid from a Japan 500 years in the future, where war doesn't exist, had eyes that were incredibly clear. Kurikara suggests it's because his life has been full of hardship since he was small, and Udo quietly agrees. This kid isn't normal, and they both know it. That night, something stirs in the darkness. A noise jolts Tanka awake, and while Koharu groggily asks what's going on, he's already on his feet, heading to check. But before he can get far, Udo appears in full battle gear, with a lantern glowing at his waist. The High Preceptor has summoned them. All of them, not just Tanka. Koharu immediately calls him out, asking if he was planning to take only Tanka again, and Udo just tells them all to come along. Udo leads the group to the High Preceptor's hall, explaining that this person is the head of the entire Ashikaga School. The kids ask what they're going to do at such an important person's place. A meet and greet? Udo vaguely says, something like that, which is never reassuring. Then he points them toward a dark underground tunnel, tells them the main hall is straight ahead, and just stays behind. The group has to walk into the pitch-black passage alone, and it's not the distance that's the problem. They emerge into the main hall and come face to face with the High Preceptor, Ono no Takamura, an apostle of the war gods. The guy is absolutely massive, towering over everyone in ornate robes with intricate patterns, and the kid's first reaction is pure terror. Tanka can barely get the words out. "He's huge," Akiho whispers, "scary." And even Koharu looks rattled. But what Tanka notices more than anything else is the sheer pressure radiating from this man. The High Preceptor wastes zero time with pleasantries. He announces that the 7 of them were sought out by Dragon King Kurikara and gathered here for a purpose. What they're about to perform tonight is a ritual that will decide their fates. Upon completion, they'll be granted the protection of the 7 war gods and formally become children of the war gods. There is only one thing expected of these children, and the weight of that single expectation fills the entire hall. The mission is simple to state and impossible to comprehend. Bring an end to the Sengoku period with your own hands. The High Preceptor delivers this like it's the most natural thing in the world, but the kids are reeling. Tanka notices something off though. Weren't 7 people supposed to be chosen? There are only 6 here. Someone points it out, and another person tells them to shut up, always fussing over details. But it's not a small detail. A missing 7th member is a gap in the plan. The High Preceptor pushes forward regardless. He says they've waited 30 years for this moment and can't delay any longer, even with one person running late. He instructs everyone to take up the war fans laid before the altar and step before the flames. Koharu asks if there's a specific fan for each person, And the preceptor's answer is chilling. That will be decided now. The ritual isn't about choosing your weapon. The weapon chooses you. Back on the battlefield, because this chapter isn't done with war yet, Udo takes command with the authority of a man who's done this 1,000 times. War fan raised, voice booming, he issues orders. Defend in groups by unit, no overextending, cavalry on standby in the rear. Focus solely on defense until reinforcements arrive. The soldiers respond with unified obedience. This is what a real military strategist looks like in action. Not theory, not classroom drills, but life and death command over hundreds of men. Young Lord Taru is losing his mind on the sidelines. An arrow whistles past his face, close enough to draw blood, and his retainer begs him to be patient. But Taru can't understand why his father trusts the words of some unknown, suspicious strategist over his own son. He screams that he can do it, that he just needs a chance to prove himself. The desperation in his voice isn't just ambition. It's a kid trying to earn his father's respect on a field where mistakes cost lives. The strategy works. The enemy begins retreating, and the soldiers can barely believe it. Retreat? Is it over? It's going to end just like this? But the experienced commanders know better. They refuse to let anyone rush ahead chasing glory, because the enemy is most dangerous when they're cornered and withdrawing. Udo predicted this. He warned that the retreating force would likely try something as they pulled back into the mountains and ordered no individual heroics. But someone doesn't listen. Kanbei, the seasoned warrior who earlier mocked Tanka's question, charges ahead anyway, chasing battle merit into the trees. And just like that, he's cut down. 1 second he's alive, sword in hand, voice full of pride. And the next, he's face down in the dirt with a blade through his back. Tanka watches it happen in real time, and the look on his face says everything. The threshold between life and death. Is it really this thin? After the battle, Udo and Tanka walk together through the aftermath. Tanka asks if the real reason Udo brought him along was to test his aptitude, and Udo admits that was part of it. But there's something deeper. Udo wanted to believe that his brother's death was not in vain. Tanka had apologized back then, saying he was powerless to help Kurogane Kasetsu, and if those words were sincere, then Udo says Tanka should prove it by surviving. That will be the greatest tribute he can offer. Udo tells Tanka plainly. Today, he became certain of it. Tanka possesses both the talent and the will to survive this Sengoku period. And what Tanka just witnessed, the bluffing, the defensive formations, the psychological manipulation of an enemy too cowardly to fight overwhelming odds, that wasn't just clever tactics. Udo names it with the weight it deserves. This is military strategy. The war fan, the battlefield, the line between life and death. This is what Tanka was brought to this era to master. The chapter opens far from the Ashikaga School, deep in a forest at night, where two figures are fleeing for their lives. A man named Nobuyuki is deserting the Oda clan, and his companion Nobukatsu is trying to stop him. Nobuyuki can't take it anymore. He says their older brother Nobunaga is too cold-hearted, that living alongside him is impossible. He wants Nobukatsu to run with him, but Nobukatsu hesitates, torn between loyalty and survival. Nobukatsu calls it futile. He doesn't believe for a second that anyone can outsmart Nobunaga, not with how paranoid he is. The best Nobuyuki can hope for is to be tricked and cut down. But even on an escape attempt with everything at stake, Nobuyuki is still carrying his pet shrikes with him, and Nobukatsu is already tired of hearing about those birds. Nobuyuki calls them his precious friends, says unlike humans, these creatures are pure in their will to live. Nobukatsu tells Nobuyuki to run away too, but when asked where to, he can't say. What he does say hits different. It is a land of hope for me. Nobuyuki warns him to watch out for their brother's pursuers, says Nobunaga may have already caught wind of their plan. Then he tells Nobukatsu something cryptic and chilling. A human cannot become like a shrike. He leaves without looking back, disappearing into the darkness between the trees. Back at the Ashikaga School, the preceptor declares the ritual's purpose in full. The talent lying dormant in their souls, as rulers' aids will be drawn out by the blessing of the 7 war gods. He explains it like dropping a stone into an ancient pond. If they truly yearn for power and strive to manifest it, the war gods will answer. The Ashikaga Academy is where they'll pursue the studies needed to survive this era, and deep beneath the Banaji Temple lies their true training ground. The preceptor lays down their mission with absolute clarity. They will use these powers to serve the warlords the school has carefully selected. Their duty as the Yashuku is singular and enormous, to take over the realm. That's the only aim he wants them to pursue. One of the other chosen scoffs, calling them outcasts, but the big guy, Amato Kigai, shuts that down immediately. They're not outcasts. They're special, chosen ones fit to lead others. Amato's philosophy is pragmatic and cold. He says they'll eventually serve someone as military strategists anyway, so there's no point overthinking the chain of command. Whether you rise up from there depends on your own merit. Another chosen, a sharp-tongued guy, fires back that Amato's words are full of crap and that his clumsy concern for the group is annoying. He says he doesn't have a slave mentality and tells Amato to go back to not talking. The tension between these two is instant and electric. That tension explodes into violence. The sharp-tongued guy lunges, and Amato meets him head-on, fists flying in the underground chamber while everyone watches in shock. But before it can escalate further, Tanka steps between them and catches both punches simultaneously. He parried perfectly, stopping two trained fighters cold with raw instinct. Both of them stare at him in disbelief. This kid just read both their attacks in a single instant. Tanka doesn't flinch. He tells them to stop the pointless bickering because they're scaring his little sister. Then he lays out his position. Regardless of how they all got here, they're going to become military strategists, the kind of people who command others. He's not saying they have to be friends, but they need to at least function. The big guy, Amato, is impressed, and even the sharp-tongued one goes quiet. Not out of respect, but because he just got physically outclassed by a teenager in a school uniform. The High Preceptor takes control of the room again. He tells them that leading others is the same as leading yourself. Mastering yourself is the first step toward becoming a military strategist. Then, he instructs them to take up their war fans and delivers 3 rules that land like hammer blows. Never cast those fans aside, never wield them without a strategy in mind, and never underestimate the weight they carry. These aren't props. These are the symbols of the lives they'll command. The ritual begins. Each of them steps before the altar flames holding their war fan, and Akiho notices something strange. The fire isn't burning her. It feels cold. The Preceptor's grin widens as he gives one final warning. From this moment on, no matter what they see or hear, no matter what happens, they must not move a single muscle. Then he announces it with a smile that's equal parts holy man and demon. Let the divine ritual of talent matching commence. The Preceptor transforms. His body swells, his face distorts into something ancient and monstrous. A massive spirit figure with wild eyes and bared teeth, chanting Buddhist mantras that each invoke one of the 7 war gods. He declares himself the underworld official of the 5 paths, Ono no Takamura, and calls upon Hachiman Daibasatsu to hearken to his call. The chamber fills with supernatural energy, and the kids can only stand frozen as instructed while the divine spirits judge their talents. A massive spectral eye appears in the flames, not godlike and beautiful, but grotesque and ancient, something that looks more like a monster than a deity. The Preceptor roars at them not to move as the 7 war gods peer deep into each of their souls, deciding who deserves their power. Koharu screams, Akiho clings to the wall, and even Tanka can barely contain his shock. One of the other chosen mutters that these aren't gods, they're monsters. But it wasn't all just hand-waving after all. 5 days pass since the ritual, and the chapter shifts to a training montage. During the day, they attend Udu's lectures and basic training at the Ashikaga School. Late at night, they hone their war god powers in the underground sanctuary of Beneji Temple. Tanka's power is called aura reading. His already sharp ability to read people's actions and intentions has been supernaturally amplified. He can actually see them now, not just sense them. Everything was going smoothly up to this point. But there's a problem. The war fan assigned to Tanka by the ritual, it won't respond to him. He sits alone trying to commune with it, asking Koharu and Akiho if they've heard anything from theirs. Koharu's been doing great, swinging a summoned sword around with flashy moves and earning Akiho's adoration. Akiho herself is still scared of her power, but can at least summon a weapon. Tanka, not a peep. He always thought he could do anything if he put his mind to it, but maybe that confidence is exactly the problem. Before he can spiral further, a messenger arrives screaming orders. Udu has summoned them to the bell tower immediately. This isn't a drill. The whereabouts of the final Yashoku member, Kogetsu Ryuan, have been confirmed. He was rushing to the school, but got ambushed by unidentified pursuers and is now in a dire situation. Udu declares that the Ashikaga School of the Eternal Night will resolve this, and it will serve as the Yashoku's first real battle. Udu wastes no time assigning roles. He names Amato Kigai as commander since he's the eldest among them, and tells everyone to demonstrate their talents to the fullest. One of the other chosen smirks that being ambushed says a lot about Kogetsu's actual skill level, but Udu cuts that cynicism dead. Don't say that. He is a comrade walking the same path as all of you. The missing seventh member isn't just a name on a list anymore. He's someone who needs saving, right now. Udo pulls Tanka aside as they prepare to depart. Tanka apologizes, especially after talking such big game about wanting to live in this era. His war fan still hasn't responded. He's embarrassed, defeated, carrying the weight of a power that chose him but won't activate. Udo doesn't scold him. Instead, he asks a simple question. I understand you don't have a weapon of your own yet, right? The way he says it makes clear this isn't small talk. It's a setup for something. Udo draws a blade, not just any blade, but a sword forged in the third year of the Kyotoku era, a weapon that has survived a century of chaos without a single mark on it. Its beauty has never been marred despite everything this era has thrown at it. Udo tells Tanka he felt this sword was worthy of carving out his path in life, and that's why he wants to entrust it to him. Tanka stares at the blade, speechless, before managing a single word, "Thank you." Meanwhile, the chapter cuts to a dark forest where a figure on horseback is fleeing through the trees. Nobukatsu, the twin from the opening scene, carrying his shrikes and running toward the Ashikaga School. Behind him, pursuers are closing in. He's the missing seventh member, Kogetsu Riwan, and the rescue mission the Yashoku just mobilized for is heading straight toward him. The two storylines are about to collide, and somewhere in that same darkness, Nobuyuki, the brother who refused to run, stands alone with a decision already made. He told Nobukatsu that a human cannot become like a shrike, pure in its will to live. Whatever that means for Nobuyuki's own fate, it's clear he's chosen a path he can't come back from. The Oda clan's internal war is spilling outward, and Tanka's group is about to walk right into the middle of it. Tanka grips the sword with both hands, knuckles white, and swears he'll take good care of it with everything he's got. The emotion on his face is raw. This isn't just a weapon, it's the first time someone has entrusted him with something that says, I believe you'll survive. Then Udo drops the real weight of what's coming. This mission involves reinforcements and relief forces in the heat of active battle. The exact scenario where a strategist's prowess is tested the most. He looks Tanka dead in the eyes and says it plain, the outcome of this battle rests entirely in your hands.